She was 25, but most mornings felt the same. The alarm at 7:00, coffee strong enough to jolt her awake, leggings, sneakers, and then the slow walk to the gym. It wasn't that she loved weights or treadmills. She loved the silence in between, the rhythm of her breath in the pool, the way her arms cut through the water, the ache that reminded her she was alive. Her life looked full from the outside. Pilates on Mondays, swimming on Tuesdays, a women's book circle on Thursdays. But every time she returned home, slipping the key into the door of her small apartment, she was met with that echoing quiet that never seemed to soften. The walls knew her better than anyone else did. She wasn't desperate, not anymore. She had been on dates, dozens of them. Lawyers who bragged too much, bartenders who never called back, gym rats who cared more about mirrors than conversation. Every time she thought someone might be different, they ended up proving her wrong. Idiots, she called them. And yet, some foolish corner of her heart still flickered, waiting for a spark. That Tuesday night, she came back from the pool, hair damp, body warm from the water. She poured herself tea, opened her phone, and scrolled through messages she didn't want to answer. "Hey, sexy." Delete. "You up?" Delete. She sighed, tossing the phone aside. It was the same cycle. Attention that meant nothing. Promises that dissolved by morning. She brushed her hair, looking in the mirror at the faint shadows under her eyes. She was healthy though strong, attractive. She knew that. But strength didn't hold you at night, and attractiveness didn't whisper comfort when you felt small. In the book circle the next evening, she listened as women her age laughed about their boyfriends, husbands, the little dramas of relationships that, though imperfect, were at least real. She smiled, turned pages, and gave her opinions on the novel. But inside she felt like an outsider peeking through a window. Later, back at the gym, she pushed through another routine, sweat streaking down her back. Around her, men grunted and posed, checking themselves in the mirrors. She tightened her ponytail, wiped her forehead, and thought, not one of them, not again. And yet, as she stretched in the corner, she couldn't help the thought that pressed against her chest. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, someone would surprise her. For now, though, it was just her, the weights, the water, and that quiet space she had built to protect herself from disappointment. The gym was half empty that evening, the kind of quiet she liked. She was adjusting the settings on the rowing machine when she noticed someone watching from a few feet away. Tall, broad shoulders, dark t-shirt clinging to his chest. At first, she ignored him. She'd seen the type before, men who thought sweat was a mating call. But then he walked over. "Need a hand?" he asked, nodding at the machine. His voice was smooth, confident, not pushy. She looked up, cautious. "I've got it." He smiled, not offended. "I know, but the resistance knob sticks sometimes. Here." He twisted it easily, then stepped back. "All yours." She gave a small nod. "Thanks." Most guys would have lingered, waiting for attention. Instead, he walked away, heading toward the dumbbells. She caught herself watching him in the mirror, steady, composed, not showing off. Later, when she moved to the stretching area, he was there again, rolling his shoulders after a set. Their eyes met, and this time he spoke first. "You come here often," he said. She smirked. "That's the oldest line in the book." "Maybe," he replied, grinning. "But it's still true. I've seen you here before. You swim, right?" She blinked. "Yeah." "How do you know?" Hard to miss someone carrying goggles on Tuesdays. That made her laugh, soft and unexpected. "Fair enough." He introduced himself, Daniel. She hesitated, then told him her name. For a few minutes, they traded small talk, workouts, music playlists, the absurdity of overpriced smoothies at the juice bar. His jokes weren't forced, his eyes attentive. When her session was over, She was surprised to find him waiting by the entrance. "Coffee?" he asked. Not pushy, just curious. She almost said no, her default answer, but something in the way he asked made her pause. He wasn't trying to impress her, just offering. "All right," she said at last. They walked to a cafe down the street, the air still warm from the day. Inside, under the dim lights, they sat across from each other, steam rising from their cups. Conversation flowed easier than she expected. Movies, family quirks, the worst dates they'd ever had. She laughed more than she wanted to admit. As the hours stretched, she felt a strange warmth blooming in her chest. Maybe, she thought, this wasn't like the others. Maybe this could be different. When he leaned in slightly, brushing a playful comment against her ear, her cheeks flushed. She looked away, smiling despite herself. And for the first time in months, she wondered if she was finally done with idiots. The first weeks with Daniel felt almost like a gift. He texted every morning, short but sweet. "Good luck at work today. Don't forget water after the pool." She caught herself smiling at the screen, her guard slowly lowering. They met twice more for coffee, then dinner on a Friday. He opened doors, asked about her day, even remembered the name of her favorite book from the women's circle. But little cracks began to show. One evening, she mentioned a weekend trip with her girlfriends. His smile tightened. "That's cute," he said. "But don't you think you're a little old for girls' weekends?" She laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. "Excuse me." "Just saying," he shrugged, sipping his drink. "You could use that time for something more productive." The comment sank like a stone in her chest. She brushed it off, but a quiet unease lingered. At the gym, he started correcting her form, even when she didn't ask. "No, like this," he'd say, moving her arms, his touch lingering just a second too long. At first, it felt intimate. Later, it felt like control. One night at dinner, his phone kept buzzing. When she finally asked who it was, he smirked. "Relax, just friends." Her fork stilled. "Friends who call you 5 times in 2 hours? Don't be dramatic," he snapped, then softened instantly, reaching for her hand. "I like you. Don't ruin this with jealousy." The sudden shift left her reeling, doubting herself. But the worst came 2 weeks later. She had invited him over, cooking pasta, pouring wine. They were laughing when his phone lit up again. This time, with a woman's name and a message that glowed across the screen. "Missed you tonight." Her heart dropped. "Who's that?" He grabbed the phone quickly. "Nobody. Just someone I used to date." Her voice trembled. "You told me you were serious about this." He leaned back, irritation flashing across his face. "God, you're needy. You know what your problem is. You think every guy is the same, so you push them until they leave. Maybe you should look in the mirror." The words stung, sharp and cold. She stood up, arms crossed, trying to hold herself together. "Get out." Daniel scoffed, but he didn't argue. He grabbed his jacket, muttering under his breath, and slammed the door on his way out. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing against her chest. She sat at the table, the pasta untouched, tears she didn't want sliding down her face. For days after, she replayed his words, fighting the familiar cycle of anger and self-doubt. But deep down, she knew the truth. He wasn't different. He was exactly what she had sworn to avoid, and she promised herself she wouldn't fall for a mask again. The days after Daniel faded into a blur. She deleted his number, blocked him everywhere, but his voice lingered like a bruise. "You're needy. You ruin things." Those words clung to her in quiet moments, like when she poured her morning coffee or tied her sneakers at the gym. Still, she kept moving. The gym became more than a place to sweat. It became a sanctuary. She swam longer, letting the water rinse away the sting of his memory. stroke after stroke. She felt her body grow lighter, stronger. By the time she climbed out, hair dripping and muscles trembling, she felt as though she had washed more than chlorine from her skin. At night, though, loneliness crept back in. The women at her book circle spoke of husbands and weekend getaways, and she forced a smile, nodding along. When she walked home, the quiet pressed hard, echoing through the small apartment like a reminder of what she didn't have. She would curl under a blanket, stare at the ceiling, and wonder if maybe she was the problem after all. But slowly, a shift began. Instead of scrolling through old texts, she opened the books she had been neglecting. Instead of wondering what Daniel was doing, she lit candles, ran herself warm baths, and rediscovered the peace of being alone. She looked at her reflection, not with self-criticism, but with a softer gaze. "I am enough," she whispered once, surprised at how foreign the words sounded. One Saturday morning, she joined a new workshop at the community center, a women's wellness circle that combined meditation with yoga. The room smelled of sage and sandalwood, mats lined up neatly in the sunlit space. She closed her eyes, breathing deep, listening to the soft hum of voices. For the first time in weeks, her chest loosened. She thought of Daniel less often. The sting dulled, replaced by a quiet strength. She began to notice little things she had ignored. The laughter of children in the pool, the kindness of a stranger holding the door, the beauty in her own small routines. It wasn't about waiting for someone anymore. It was about finding herself again. And yet, she couldn't shake the flicker of hope. The idea that maybe, someday, someone might step into her world not to take from it, but to share it. She didn't know when or how, or if it would happen at all, but she was ready to recognize it when it did. It happened on a Thursday evening, when she almost skipped the pool. Work had been long, her body tired, but something inside nudged her to go anyway. The water felt cooler than usual, refreshing, and she slipped into her rhythm. Halfway through her laps, she noticed someone new in the next lane. He wasn't flashy. No loud splashes, no show-off dives, just steady, clean strokes, the kind that came from quiet discipline. When they both reached the wall at the same time, he pulled off his goggles and gave a small nod. His eyes were warm, steady, the kind that held you without trying too hard. "Good pace," he said, catching his breath. She smiled faintly. "Thanks. You too." They rested for a moment, water dripping from their hair, silence stretching comfortably between them. Then he offered his hand. "I'm Adam." She hesitated, then shook it. "Nice to meet you." After the swim, she found him waiting near the lockers. "Do you usually come here Thursdays?" he asked. "Most weeks," she replied cautiously. "Maybe I'll see you again then." His smile was easy, unforced, and he left it at that. The following week, he was there again, and the week after. Slowly, a routine formed, laps side by side, brief conversations about books, travel, music. He never pressed, never rushed. He listened, asked thoughtful questions, and laughed softly when she teased him. One evening after class at the women's circle, she saw him waiting outside, leaning casually against the wall. "I didn't know you came here," she said, surprised. "New to it," he admitted. "Thought I'd try something different." They walked together under the amber glow of streetlights. She felt her guard rising, old instincts warning her not to trust too quickly. But something about Adam was different. His pace matched hers, his silence never awkward, his gaze never wandering. When they reached her street, he hesitated. "Can I walk you home?" She studied him for a moment, then nodded. His presence beside her felt grounding, not invasive. At her door, they lingered. He didn't lean in recklessly. Instead, he touched her hand gently, a question more than a move. The warmth of his fingers sent a shiver up her arm. She let her hand linger, then pulled back slowly, her lips curving into a small smile. "Good night, Adam." "Good night," he said softly, stepping away. Inside, she leaned against the door, heart racing, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time: anticipation. The weeks unfolded like a quiet bloom. Adam was there, at the pool, in the cafe around the corner, sometimes walking her home after the circle. What struck her most wasn't grand gestures, but the way he noticed. He remembered how she liked her coffee slightly bitter, how her shoulders tensed after long swims, how her laugh softened when she was truly relaxed. Their conversations deepened, at first about books and films, then about fears, ambitions, the quiet ache of loneliness they had both known. One night at dinner, she admitted softly, "I almost gave up on men completely." He looked at her without flinching. "I almost did too. On love, not women. Until now." Her chest tightened. His words weren't rehearsed or polished. They felt real. The first kiss came not under dramatic fireworks, but on a quiet evening walk. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, paused as if asking permission, and when she leaned closer, their lips met. Slow, tender, but charged with something that made her knees weaken. She pulled back, breathless, whispering, "I wasn't ready for that." "Neither was I," he murmured, smiling softly. From then, closeness grew naturally. Sitting side by side on her couch, their hands found each other. In the kitchen, while she stirred pasta, he came behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his breath warm against her neck. It wasn't rushed. It was patient, deliberate, a dance of trust. One rainy night, she let him stay. They curled on the sofa, music humming low, candles flickering. His fingers traced circles on her palm, her head resting against his chest. The air thickened with unspoken desire, but he never pushed. When their lips met again, deeper this time, she felt heat rise through her, but also safety, as though passion and comfort had finally learned to share the same space. She broke the kiss, laughing softly. "You're not like the others." "I'd never want to be," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to question, to search for hidden red flags. She simply let herself feel. The loneliness that once echoed in her apartment was gone, replaced by laughter, whispered words, and the steady rhythm of two hearts finding each other. Lying there with him, her fingers tangled in his, she realized it. This wasn't just another fleeting chapter. This was the love she had been waiting for. And this time, it felt real.